Hello and welcome to day 86 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tom Loker, and you are still with me. Thank you here on day 86. Oh boy, we're just moving right along. Appreciate new subscribers trickling in. You know, good grassroots thing happening. I don't care. I'm not numbers and all that. You know, maybe if I leave this to my offspring one day and they pick up the mantle, or someone else picks up the mantle, then it can explode and be some great machine on the earth, generating revenue and growth and things like that. But I just like my little family that we've got started so far. We're here talking about black issues in America, slave-descended black people in America, and how we, because I am one of them, are, and how we struggle, what we're confronted with, possible suggestions to overcome our marginalization, our own black glass ceiling, how to address racism, white superiority, and favor in America. A whole lot of avenues and ways we could take. We look into the past a lot to get a good foothold and give us some perspective. It's just the better, further we can look in the past, the more effective we can be here in the present and beyond. So, having said that, two main ideas have emerged since the beginning of this project. First idea has two thoughts. First thought is, does the black mind, does the slave mind still prevail? Is it being passed down, inherited, intuited, conditioned into young black minds from generation to generation? You know, we got a lot of legalese on the books about how blacks and all other people are to be treated in America. Yet, what is the result? What's the outcome? You know, we can see, though, statistically, blacks bear the brunt of America's dysfunctional issues. As a group, we're the poorest. We're a minority of minorities, all of the above. So based on even just those few facts, we can find an answer to the first part of that. Second part is, does the white mind of entitlement, attitude of privilege, and whatnot pass down, prevail, get passed on from generation to generation? And is their expectation of privilege and favor a hereditary thing, intuited, conditioned, environmental, sucking up the world's resources, especially American whites, and a very elite, affluent class becoming very top-heavy in America. We're in some very challenging. We're coming into some very challenging times, not just recovering from the recent financial crisis, but the financial elite very top-heavy. Our environment is broken. We've had a disastrous 4 years politically in America. A lot of bad signs are converging. It'd be one different if it's one over here, one over there, but there's an extreme convergence of negativity and whatnot happening. And because blacks are so vulnerable, you know, it makes our situation that much more challenging as we navigate America's economic, social, vocational landscape, all those financial landscapes. Now, my second thought that's emerging is a growing burden. For Black Americans, especially those descended from slaves, to become financially literate. We just do not have our public education system fails us in this. Actually, politics and financial education, but financial mostly. The money is just where the power is, and we have no financial literacy. What's an asset? What's a liability? Are they interchangeable? Can they both be benefits? Can they both be detriments? You know, beyond putting money in the bank, do we understand interest rates? Do we understand how a few white men and a few banks can collapse the world economic system? Can we extract any moral allegiances from our understanding of Russia, North Korea, Iran, Saudi Arabia, even as far as women's rights, human rights issues? Extract all of that jargon, that political stuff, and look at these other nations in an economic light that are contrary to us. Then we can, if we were doing our due diligence, we'll see that the American system of money, its creation, literally out of thin air, is a problem for some of these countries that have tangible assets backing their dollars. Some of them, not all. It's a complicated conversation. I won't make a blanket statement. But if we can interject and see the exchange of money and those rates and how that is a factor in our relations with some of these countries we have issue with, then applying financial literacy can give us a better understanding. Hence, the first factor in punishing some of these nations that may be contrary to the United States is sanctions. It's financial, economic sanctions against these countries. It's sequestering them, it's frowning upon other nations that do business with them. International politics is very complicated. Our ally may be an ally with our assumed enemy, in some cases, on this small speck of dust floating in the universe. Amazing. Humans we can screw up a heart attack, I'll tell you. My burden comes from a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. You find him all over YouTube. He's speaking around the country still. I really appreciate him. I hope I can meet him someday. I read through 3 of his works, watched a lot of videos. Glad that a mutual friend of ours introduced me to his work. First book I read was A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. We rely on these 3 texts very heavily, and some other sources. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and finally Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You find Dr. Anderson as well, powernomics.com, Heritage Institute. Behind me you'll see #us2. That's where those black women essentially are there, discoursing, getting support from one another. There are some nuances between male, female issues that may be exacerbated by racism and slavery and things like that and such. A good kind of black Facebook would be Black Enough, BLAGGENUF. Um, find more places there. This is the information age. If you found me on YouTube, I'm not very high up on Google's algorithm on search. Uh, Discounting days is a kind of a common thing. So if you found me, hooray, that means you can find plenty of other material. If you're business-minded, entrepreneurial-minded, you can go to theblackbusinessschool.com. Find Dr. Boyce Watkins. Tell him that Tomlin's Nyback sent you. I've never met him, but he's a good guy. Got a good product, and he's gives you a little taste. Makes it available. Some of his lectures and from his team and his lectures. He's easy to find on YouTube as well. Actually, he knows Dr. Claude Anderson very well. Those two have a lot of videos together. Oh, okay. So what are we doing? Oh, how about some story time? I like story time. We're coming out of Harriet Beecher Stowe's incredible work, mid-1800s, Uncle Tom's Cabin. From here, we reference this book because we get a lot of America's stereotypes, a lot of America's those seeds and germs of the interaction between blacks and whites in America. A lot of it comes here in this book. Literature, art, theater, very important devices, right? Look at what music does. I wish MTV was still the music channel it was. But money. People like seeing reality TV. I hate reality TV. But anyway, how MTV it really shaped a lot of my identity. How music shapes a lot of identity. People that listen to one genre are different in a lot of aspects than people who listen to music of another genre. Those who listen to classical, that's all, and are devoted to classical, are a really different group than those listening to hip hop and rap versus heavy metal groups. I'm just talking socially. The music, the art shapes what the culture. Us humans, we model ourselves after the kind of entertainment we gravitate towards. That's in religion. Think about it. Whatever we're exposed to molds who we are. It helps to shape us. So her work is very important. And we'll see as we're going to come across some things like blackface. Interactions between white and blacks is all through there. But her work is very descriptive. And although a lot of this stuff that she writes about already prevailed in the culture, because she's writing from slavery perspective, although this stuff already prevailed, her work was highly read when it came out. When this work was kind of exposed to the public back in the mid-1800s, it was the second bestseller of literature in that time period. And you know what number one was? That's been number one forever, is the Bible, right? I mean, which is kind of sad. We got so much Bible out there, yet we're just gunning down people and having wars and whatnot. But that's the force of her work and how important it is. So let's get into it though. Story time. We're in chapter 8. Eliza's escape. She's run off. She's barefoot, gotten across the Ohio River on big chunks of ice, carrying her son. It's a very supernatural feat. Not impossible, but highly unlikely. It's a miracle, to go down in the river on ice chunks. You're not going to recover from that. That it's not going to end well. But she's so desperate. The maternal instinct has just driven her mad, and she's going to keep her son from slavery. You know what? Like, she's mad with keeping her son safe, but like, what has driven her so insane? I mean, she's grown up on a hospitable plantation. The further you go north, the kind of the better the conditions are for slaves. It's the deep South, where people are worked to death, sleep on dirt floors and straw. Those are the amenities. We're going to see later on. I'm way ahead in the reading. You're going to find some very challenging conditions for black folks in slave times. So Eliza, we see her going off. Now, Haley is the slave trader. She's bought little Harry from Mr. Shelby, which is what all the commotion is about. He's looking at his investment disappear over the hill into the woods somewhere. So, he kind of settles down the best he can and goes back to the inn. And he's going to drink his sorrows away. He meets an old friend named Tom Loker. And Tom is, he's a slave handler, trapper, tracker, so to speak. But he's a little more heavy-handed, not as civilized as Mr. Haley or some of the northern plantation owners and stuff. And he's a big guy, and he spits and he hammers on tables and he drinks alcohol, and he tells how he gives the slaves whatever their condition. He puts their fist in their face and gives them the what for to keep the slave in line. And Isaac Loker has a very heavy hand, relentless. This is a guy. He's going to have his conversation once. You might survive that conversation twice if he's sober and he's in his right mind. But it ain't going to be no third time, because that individual's mind is going to be right, going to be submissive. If Tom Loker passes gas, that slave is going to jump as high as they can to sniff it up. That's the kind of intimidation that this guy is a terrorist among the slaves, and he's especially tough with the matriarchs, with the slave mothers. Haley tells a story about a slave mother who's actually she's got a blind child, and he recognizes that when the slave mothers have children who are physically challenged or sickly, handicapped, or whatever, the mother is that much more instinctual towards the child. And he tells a story of a blind child. Somehow he got the child sold off for a keg of whiskey, which is like, it's interesting. How's he going to sell a useless boy? I'm sure he told the buyer that the boy is blind. what does a slave buyer do with a blind young boy slave? A lot of problems there, a lot of issues. You wonder, it doesn't come up much. I've read ahead, and we're going to talk probably very detailed, in a detailed way, about sexuality, sexual exploitation, but could that be a motivation for this slave buyer? You know, this is a black child who is not going to be much good. It's going to need all the care and training and stuff. You know, it's a medical experimentation. You know, those are there's some problematic issues there that Haley, and this happens on a boat. They're just going a short trip. They're not out crossing the ocean. These are just rivers in the Americas, and he's just on a short time on this boat has convinced someone to buy this slave boy for a keg of whiskey, you know. Or is it benevolence, altruism? Has he run into a free family, so maybe some Quakers have some pity? Interesting. It doesn't come out in the chapter, but I'm just thinking out loud and brainstorming what anyone would want um, with this blind child. If they are godly, then it's going to come out well. If they're ungodly, then some issues arise. You know, the motivations of having a black, blind male child. So anyway, in Haley's story about this, the mother catches wind of it. She takes the child, jumps up on a bale of hay that's stacked up on this boat, and you know, she sees she can't prevail over the white mob that's now surrounding her. So she jumps. She's got a knife. She's fending them off. Seeing that she can't prevail, she jumps into the water with her son, and they never rise again. Loker's disgusted with the story. Tom Loker's the kind of guy. Once he gets his property, he has that conversation right off the bat, fist in their face, very dominant. He's described as a tall man, wide dude, intimidating, and he puts these slave mothers in their place very shortly. Mr. Loker and Mr. Haley are at the inn, the tavern. Alcohol is beginning to kick in. Haley is still lamenting his loss, but he knows Tom Loker is a guy that can he remedies these kind of problems. He tracks well. He can be commissioned, trusted to go ahead and reconcile Haley's problem. They're old friends. Alcohol's kicking in. Haley commissions Loker to go after the young boy and his mother, and all for $40. Tom Loker promises some resolution to Haley's problem. You know, $40 to track, trace, trap a slave boy and his mother. Quite the price. Now, if you remember Black Sam and Andy, they were the two slave assistants that helped Haley. When they saw, now they engaged in all kinds of subtle ways of subterfuge to help Eliza get some space and get an escape. Once they saw her get up on the Ohio side, up over there in the Free State, and disappear, their job was done, and they were so elated. Haley even berates them with his riding whip and all that. But Black Sam and Andy are just too happy that Eliza has escaped with little Harry. Now, so in light of that, they throw up their hands. They feel their work is done. And interesting, like Haley doesn't have the control or command over them. They're just assisting in the hunt. So they take, this kind of came up in the previous chapters, they're concerned about Mr. Shelby's horses and property, which takes precedent over anything this madman slave handler wants. So they take off back to the Shelby plantation, full of joy. Black Sam, if you remember, he entertains. He's the guy that is going to keep the white folks smiling. He's going to bow his head and pretend to be a stooge and a goof in white company, to be dumb, illiterate, witless. That's his angle to keep him out of trouble, to keep white folks at ease. If he's just the dumb nigger on the plantation, he jokes, makes the most terrible jokes about himself. The master cut his building up a chicken shack and cuts the board wrong. Well, Black Sam's the kind of guy that takes all the heat and responsibility. He said, "Well, I knew I should have given Master the other saw." That kind of thing. That's who Black Sam is. Uh, it keeps white folks at ease. Well, we see it in today's modern society. I do it. I do it a lot. I got a white supervisor at work that kind of acts that way too. It irritates me when it comes at me. I'm moving away from that kind of demeanor. But you see it today. Game show hosts, sports people, talk show hosts, keeping the white folks, right? Because for some reason there's some neurosis out there where white folks have some kind of prevailing fear of black folks. And it's very sad that they are like that, So there's this attitude that prevails that keeps black folks being so non-threatening. We were beaten, whipped, branded, raped, separated from families, worked to death, with marginal, if at best, health care, kidnapped, lied to, lynched, and we're the ones that have to be non-threatening out in the world. Go figure. $40 to go catch Haley. So they're going that way north. Black Sam and Andy are getting back south to the Shelby plantation. So now after Black Sam debriefs the Shelbys, Mrs. Shelby is relieved because she doesn't like the whole slavery business. White women, very supportive. When you talk about emancipation and stuff, well, if you're not a white man, you're probably going through some challenging circumstances. But blacks and white women did share a lot of space, and there's a lot of advocacy there from white women in a lot of ways. So Mrs. Shelby is very glad that Eliza has gone on. Now, after Sam's debrief with the Shelbys, he can go back to the kitchen where he meets Aunt Chloe, that's Tom's wife. She prepares a meal, and the whole plantation, literally the community, comes together to hear the story. Remember, they don't have internet, the television, cable. You know, if the roosters crowing after dark, that's entertainment on the plantation. So telling stories by fires and after the white man is served and kind of put to bed, then the black entertainment can begin. It's no different there on the Shelby plantation. Black Sam tells the story with a lot of flourishes and embellishments and turkey legs and grease and stuff and whatnot, and he entertains the community. We're going to check in and see how this hunt goes, what's going to happen. As Harriet seems to be, she focuses on this event, maternal instincts, tracking runaway slaves, a slave feigning ignorance, but is actually very smart and wise, helps another slave escape, entertains away any suspicion of his culpability in what has just transpired on the plantation. Interesting story. She's a great writer. I like her a whole lot. I'm Tomlin's Nyback, day 86 out of the way, 365 days towards racial change. Please come back, tune in tomorrow. We'll say maybe get back to some serious issues. Bye-bye.